Dobry Jutuborowski. I was originally going to title this video, "So My God, It's Islam!" But that might have been seen as exploiting another YouTube user, an outspoken critic of Islam, to further this video, so I changed that lest it be taken as such an unintended reference. Anyway, that said, last Sunday, CNN rebroadcast its documentary Unwelcome, the Muslims Next Door, about the attempt of the small Muslim community of Murfreesboro, Tennessee, to construct a mosque/Islamic center and the backlash this provoked among the non-Muslim majority. The hate one saw in the faces of the anti-Muslim crowd was nothing new to those of you who might remember civil rights days, with the usual caveats among the respectable, "I'm not a bigot, but, you know, if you let them proliferate, they'll marry our daughters, and after beating them, force their half-breed young'uns to vote in Sharia law at the next city council meeting." To be fair, I heard no slurs on camera like raghead or sand nigger. No crosses were burnt on lawns, but you could see the fire burning already in a number of eyes, and I guarantee that away from the camera, in private, the slurs were slung as freely as other shit reserved for personal time in the toilet. A specific irony here, in this case, is that one of the most outspoken anti-Muslim, anti-mosque leaders is black or mixed race by the looks of him, with a Muslim ex-wife. Their rhetoric came down to the usual historic American know-nothingism. We don't like them because they ain't our kind of people, they don't belong here, or in plain words, because they're foreigners. Proof of the absurdity of injustice, echoing Hannah Arendt's phrase of its banality, was the attempt to stop the mosque by court injunction, with the anti-mosque attorney cross-examining officials on the stand as to whether Islam was a religion or not, and propagating the idea that building the mosque would introduce Sharia law into the larger community and provide a shelter for terrorists to come and go. Every hot button to instigate xenophobia was pushed, trying to tie this local Muslim community to jihadism and misogynist brutality among fundamentalist Muslims. This was all just a rehash of trying to outlaw Mormonism because it endorsed polygamy, or Jehovah's Witnesses because they wouldn't salute the flag, or Catholics because they owe allegiance to a foreign potentate and power, the Pope and the Vatican, or Jews because, well, they're Jews, and, as we know, killed our Lord. Contrast this to the actual Muslim minority of Murfreesboro, who spoke articulate English, their children completely assimilated culturally, and were just typical immigrant families, believing in the promise of America, and eagerly embracing its civil society while clinging to their more fundamental, not necessarily fundamentalist, old world traditions. In the middle portion of the program, the present mosque's cleric, a native of Egypt, surveys the vandalized construction equipment at the proposed site and declares as Americans, we, his pronoun, have rights and that he intends to stand on them, and that the community will prevail because it stands solidly on the ground of these rights. And these are the people who don't understand our values and culture, compared to how these values are actually represented and upheld by so many real Americans. Another irony here is that 9/11 is such a transparent excuse. Immediately after said tragedy, these local Muslims experienced Christian residents coming up to them to reassure them that they didn't hold that crime against them personally. I myself witnessed the same thing in my area with local majority residents reassuring Muslims around them they didn't hold 9/11 against them either. The backlash that you would rationally expect to follow 9/11 is now present. 10 years later, after a decade of demagoguery and hate-mongering by Pat Robertson, Richard Dawkins, Pamela Geller, Christopher Hitchens, and Coulter. One funny spot in the film was the daughter of a Muslim immigrant, a Tennessee college student, who confronted a female Republican candidate who was touring the area and trying to exploit the controversy with the usual rhetoric of standing against Sharia law to stop it from repressing American women. The young Muslim lady, in unaccented standard U.S. English, said that no one was beaten in her mosque community, and she asked the candidate if she knew of any woman in Rutherford County, Tennessee, who was oppressed. The candidate tried to laugh it off and only exposed her own bone-ass demagogic ignorance. For those of you who might, for some reason, wondered why I haven't jumped on the anti-Muslim bandwagon, it's precisely because of this vicious ignorance, which unfortunately I see reflected in people who should know better, like Christopher Hitchens and Richard Dawkins. How Hitchens' support for post-9/11 NATO crusades differs from Ann Coulter's call to invade their countries, kill their leaders, and convert them escapes me, though in Hitchens' case it would be to convert them to secularism rather than Christianity. Little comfort, I am sure, to those huddling together as the cruise missiles descend on their homes. It's the rhetoric of Ann Coulter we see on the faces of some of these Murfreesboro home folks, a straight line between torching the aspirations of a local Muslim community and cluster bombing whole nations of them as endorsed by Hitchens. Of course, this doesn't apply to all Muslims. There's always some good ones, like Irshad Manji or Ayaan Ali, combine a justified criticism of traditional Islamic culture with a lot of telling the white folks what they want to hear, and the majority can feel safe and smug in their bigotry and ignore the pain and suffering they cause, or even endorse as deserved. If they don't like us picking on them, they can just change their ways or move, just like the queers, gays, and the spics, I mean Hispanics. All of them are AIDS carriers and illegal anyway, just like all real Muslims are terrorists. How you're to move when you occupy their home nations with your righteousness escapes me also. Another example of good Muslims are Libyan rebels and such who overthrow governments we don't like, or rich ones like the Saudis who may promote terrorism but got things we want like their oil. It's all well and fine if they embrace our standards and way of life at home, in Egypt, where this cleric in Murfreesboro was originally from, or under the heel of our brave troops in Iraq. All at home where it counts, not coming here to practice democracy and such and get in the way of our traditions and values, which, as we can see, have little to do with religious tolerance or liberty and justice for all. Who's that knocking at my phone? Hello, David Duke. What's up? Dried out yet from Tropical Storm Lee? What can I do for you today? Just want our secular viewers to know that you support them in their stand against Sharia law. That we, believers or agnostics or atheists, need to stand together against the Islamic threat to our common values and way of life. Hey, that's a good one. Don't tell him that part. As soon as his boys are done mopping up the Muslims, they'll be coming for you, Mr. Hitchens.